had said that we would be giving you the opportunity to talk to somebody about what it's like to teach in a face-to-face and environment at the same time. And so I'm going to fulfill that promise. And we have with us a teacher who is doing exactly that. And so go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you teach.
My name is Nakia Morgan, and I teach 5th grade science at Legacy Preparatory Charter Academy.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being here. We normally talk to middle school and high school teachers only because that's a part of people that I know, but I'm glad to have an elementary teacher here for a change and being able to get that side of it. We also have somebody else who will be chatting with us a little bit after your conversation. And go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Summar Thomas-Mosby. I'm the community educator for Children's Advocacy Center of Collin County.
And thank you both for being on. Miss Morgan, so talk a little bit about how has this COVID period been, and what have been your learning pieces through the remote learning that has led you now to remote learning and face-to-face? Talk a little bit about that, because I don't think our listeners can hear enough from the field and from a teacher who's been doing this since the 3rd week of March. What have you been your takeaways? You're on the other side now. Tell us what it's been like.
Okay, so remote learning, when we first started out, it was kind of like at the beginning, so it was very nerve-wracking trying to adjust, but I mean, we did it for what we needed to do. So starting this year, we had more preparation, so that was easy to transition the kids. I think they knew more about what to expect and how to go about the changes. The adjustment was really trying to help them understand that they had to take ownership of their own learning and really grow in that process. So eventually once we got a routine down, they were able to do that more effectively. But then when coming face to face, we got to see how some kids, they were just like, I'm so happy to be in the classroom. I really love it. This is so much fun. Even though that they still are virtual, they get to see the teacher face to face, and even the virtual kids have more access because now the lessons are more live and not just where they just have to watch it and they don't have an opportunity to ask questions as much. But now they get the opportunity, and the engagement is more of a cohesive thing than it's just like, here's your lesson, watch the video. Now it's more of I can talk to this person who I see all the time, but I don't get to see her face. So now they're able to put 2 and 2 together. And I think the lessons have become more effective than that, where they now comment of, oh, this is so much fun. I like it now, so I think both sides are now having more of a cohesive learning, and they're wanting to be a part of it now. So I do like that a lot.
So have you seen kids go from hating virtual instruction to actually coming to enjoy it?
Yes.
I've heard that from other teachers, that some kids that were not very good students in a face-to-face environment actually have been blossoming in a remote setting.
Yes. I think now, because they're learning how to utilize the tool and understanding that, how best they learn. Now, some of them, it was difficult at first because they felt like they needed somebody, which was, I think, is why we have now kids in the school, because they just need someone there, which is fine. And then there are some that take advantage of just really being, a self-go getter, motivated, and they can just do it by themselves. Then you do have some that are even virtual that still needs that hand. So even with us doing virtual and live, it does help with that, because now they can really ask questions if they were in the classroom, but they're virtual. So the parents, I think, is also more involved too, because they can now hear the live lessons too.
So you bring up a good point about parents. I've also read that parents can be a blessing and a curse when it comes to sitting next to their child in this remote instruction world.
Yes, they can. I think now that they have full access where they can ask questions, I think it also gives them an understanding. One thing that also has helped, since we have merged the two, everybody's on a schedule. And because they're on a schedule, I think it helps also those that are asynchronous that just need something, like I need something to follow. It helps them also. And so because of that, I think it has now bridged that gap between the asynchronous and the synchronous classroom.
So can you talk a little bit about the asynchronous versus synchronous classroom so that people can get a better idea? I don't think we can give too many examples right now this early of what that, especially from a teacher standpoint. How do you navigate that?
Well, with the asynchronous, it's kind of more self-motivated. So the kids have their own schedule. The teachers do live lessons, but they record those lessons, and the kids can go in at any time to look at those lessons and then do the work whenever they are able to. But with synchronous is a live session. Even though they're still virtual, they see me every day. They can ask questions during their lessons, and I'm available to them. What has happened with us now, we have bridged the gap where even the asynchronous, if they're available, they can come to the live sessions and be a part of the synchronous where they can ask questions, but then they can still do their work on their own time. But it also helps because then the video is already there. They already know what to expect, and their questions have already been answered. So it does help bridge that gap for the asynchronous students too.
Are you finding that as you get better as a teacher teaching remotely, are you able to, are kids more likely, or a greater number of kids are more likely to want to see you synchronously?
Yes. I think they're getting more comfortable. So it's becoming more like, oh, I want to see your face, or they're willing to share their live feed, and you can see their face. So then they're wanting to know if they can come to the school or different things like that. And I think the parents are getting more comfortable because then they're able to see that, because I combine both classes. Even when we meet together in the morning, I do have the synchronous students get online with the asynchronous students, so that everyone feels together, so we can build a community. Because some people feel like they're separated, but I want them to feel like they're together, even though some are virtual and some are in the classroom. And then that helps build the gap in that.
So let's talk a little bit then about that very thing. So you have been working in a remote setting since the third week of March. Did you work summer school?
I did.
So you really have the most experience of almost any teacher in the nation, because third week we went remote, and then you did summer school, and
yes.
We're in our fifth week of school. And so now you have kids back face to face. How are you able to build that community feel that really we need to do, so that both the kids at home and the kids in the classroom feel paid attention to?
Okay, so what I've been doing is being consistent. So I am very consistent in what I do as far as our community service and what unites us. So even with the virtual students before they became live students, what we did was we always did our morning routines, which is the pledges and the legacy. I call it the legacy student decree. So they're decreeing these things about what they want to become. But then from there, we always do an exercise together, whether it's a dance or something to get to know each other, or just to unite the class together. So even now, we do that every morning. So every morning, they already know what to expect. They know what we're going to do. So even the virtual kids and the synchronous kids, if they're here, they all do it together. So we're building the community. So my question was, I know one of the questions that I asked them today was, how else can we build the community? So they gave suggestions of maybe we can, do another exercise, or, maybe we can work with virtual kids, working with the school, where they can, combine together. So they're now getting more involved in the lesson because of my consistency. So my consistency and routine has helped them kind of bridge that gap. And it was an easy transition for them because they knew what to expect, even when they came here.
So when you heard that the board had approved face-to-face and remote at the same time, did you feel like you had to do any special preparation? What thoughts went through your mind about that?
Well, my thoughts was, how is this going to work? Because I was trying to figure out, like, how am I teach live and, teach virtual at the same time? What that look like? So that was my first thought. But then when I got here, what I realized is that you're just doing the same thing, except for you have a camera on while you're teaching. So, I did that at home, and I did it here at school, even in the building. So I realized that it really wasn't too much of a difference. The only thing now is that they can answer me, or even the ones that are virtual can get on their mic and answer me. So now you have that more interactive feedback, because now they can view it live.
So do you feel like you're able to give as good or almost as good of a teaching or instructional job to the kids at home as you do the ones face-to-face?
I do. So what I did was I adjusted how I talked too. So I wasn't, just like, for me, it was, I thought it was hard to just kind of like, oh my God, how am I going to teach these kids virtually if they can't see me? But then when I changed my mindset about it, I learned about how to interact with my camera and be engaging with the students. That helped them also become more engaged with me. And then on that, offering time when they can just talk and be a part of it, like they're really in a school, I think also helped them. But then with the kids that are here, they can see me, which was good for them. But then it was like, oh, they can communicate, they can say hi, they can, oh my God, hey, Miss Morgan, we see you, yay, they get really excited, even though we can't touch each other or whatever. I think that brought them comfort. So with that, I think it made it easier for me to first align my lessons where I can teach it both virtual and online, that it wasn't so much on me, that they were getting the quality learning that they needed at the same time.
So I think you said something really big there, that not every teacher has done as quickly as maybe you have, and you changed your mindset. You said that. I changed. So how were you able to do that so quickly? And can we write a book on that, or an article? Please.
Well, I think for me, I had to realize that we are all in this together, and the fact of the matter is that everybody is adjusting. So if I have to be flexible, they have to learn how to be flexible too. And the fact that these are children, they don't know. We're supposed to know. We don't know, but we're learning as we go. But I'm not going to stress out, because if I stress out, then they're going to stress out. So what I did was I just took a step back and just kind of realign what is the most important thing. And the most important thing is making sure that my kids have effective learning and not just a whole bunch of stuff to do. Because that's not helping, that's just overwhelming. So I just took a step back from just planning a whole lot of activities and making sure that everything that I planned was met. And then what I implemented is engaging them in the activities at home too. So not just having stuff online, but taking that online and putting it on paper so they have an interactive notebook that they use with their online work so that it's engaging both that side of them. So then when they finish, they have something else that they can hold on to. But making sure that it's meaningful learning and not just something to do.
And you make a good point. Now, you're a science teacher.
I am.
And so how do you do labs, for example?
So good question. We had a lab that was virtual. So I love Nearpod because Nearpod, you can go on virtual field trips and you can do interactive labs and simulations, which we did, which I think they really, really loved because they got to go and see the Yellowstone Park and they got to see the different states of matter. And then they were like, oh my goodness, Ms. Morgan, this was so much fun. And I was like, yes, they get it. Woohoo. So they were able to get to see the lab, which were really, really cool. There was another one where they did where they got to see a demo of a lab, but then there was like an interactive thing where they got to move pieces around to show what the lab and how it happened. So just making those slides more interactive, where they're not just reading stuff, but that they're participating has helped them also grow and learn. So, yeah.
Do you feel, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, and it's okay to say no, but do you feel that having been through this COVID experience of being forced to go remote instruction till now, has it made you a better teacher in any way?
It has helped me grow in the area of teaching. It helped me learn a different skill that sometimes I take for granted. Utilize the computer, but we only utilize it for certain things. But now you learn the skill of, there are different ways that a student learns, and not every student learns direct teaching. Some students learn better, from videos. Some learn better when they get to film themselves and talk. So there's so many different ways to differentiate learning. So that helped with understanding how my kids learn too.
So I just want to talk a little bit more about how you're able to meet the needs of, for example, your special ed students, your 504 students, because as I keep saying, the federal government has told us that that's the one thing they will not play on, and that is they will have those kids served remotely or face-to-face, whichever one they want to have. So how has that been done with your group of fifth graders?
Okay, so I separate them based on the learning, but actually based on the learning that we're going to do. So I may do for my 504s or even my SPED, I differentiate the learning. Now the learning is going to be the same, but it may be smaller and in different chunks. Now they're going to have a different sorting activity. All of their stuff is going to be interactive no matter what. But if they need somebody to read it, I may film myself reading the whole thing to them. That way that they can go through it. I may highlight certain points, and then I'll show them how to write in there, or I'll give them vocabulary, and it may be drag this here or do this, but I am also teaching them how to do it on a video, or we might do it together. Now, for my general ed, they may get an extended piece on that goes further, but everybody's getting the same information, except it may be a shorter version for my 504 and my SPED versus my general ed. So online, it has helped with differentiating. Flipgrid, I really, really love, because a lot of my 504 kids or even special ed love to videotape themselves and talk. So they love to do news feed and, hey, this is my lesson, this is what I learned, and I love it because then they can tell me how they learned and what they got out of it. It also has helped with parents because parents are able to communicate right there at that time, like, okay, Ms. Morgan, I don't understand this. How can we do this or whatever? So that has helped, and also in how I differentiate for my kids too. Because parents then give feedback, or well, they may need a little help here. Can we change that? So I'll go back and revamp some of the lessons.
So I'm just thinking how lucky those fifth graders are to have you. I taught fifth grade for many years, and if there's one thing I learned about fifth graders is teenagers are not born at 13, they're born in fifth grade.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, they are special.
They are.
Yeah. I enjoyed having them. So let me ask you, as a segue to our next guest, did you, during your time from the third week in March till possibly now, have you seen anything as you've worked with kids remotely that sort of sent something shivers through you, think, "Ugh, something's not right here in this home"?
Not as much in my kids. A lot of them have been very just like I'm just, and their whole thing is just they tired of being at home. Some of them. Other ones are the parents may say, you know, my child is stressed out, Miss Morgan, please help them. And then just giving them an encouraging word of letting them know that they're going to make it and that they're not going to fail and that they're doing great really boosts their confidence. So I think because a lot of them now, they have so much parent support. I haven't seen anything outside of that. Their main thing is really wanting to have feedback from the teacher of how well they're doing.
Well, I think that, and I hope that some of it has the fact that you, as a very active teacher, very engaged teacher, are keeping kids focused on school and maybe not some of the negative things that are happening. But unfortunately, that's not the case everywhere, right? And so we have Summar Thomas-Mosby here from the Collin County Child Advocacy Center. Did I say that right?
Children's Advocacy Center of Collin County. So just a little flip.
Yeah. And so she's going to be here to share with us and to help parents and maybe some of our older students to know what signs to maybe be looking for that may send a signal of distress, and that maybe the kids are sending signals of distress that they don't even realize they're sending, but that we need to sort of know to pick up and maybe then what to do about it. So first of all, talk a little bit about you and your experience in your center, and then we'll go from there, Ms. Thomas-Mosby.
No problem. So my role at the center as an educator is really just to promote awareness about different educational programs that we have and about the usefulness of intervention by all community members in preventing abuse. And so at the center, our model is set up to address child abuse through a multifaceted approach. We work with law enforcement and CPS in-house to provide forensic interviews, therapeutic and family advocacy and support services to children and families who have been victimized by child abuse.
So what did this COVID period do as far as what you'd seen in the past compared to what you started seeing after the shutdown of schools and businesses?
So there was definitely a downward trend in terms of reporting abuse. We know that abuse, of course, has been ongoing, but teachers and counselors are the primary reporters of that abuse. So unfortunately, that loss of face-to-face interaction with teachers has been a huge for reporting abuse, and we are starting to see some more reports as children return to in-person instruction.
So even though you lost your main reporters of abuse, i.e. teachers, I'm still hearing that abuse cases were on the rise, domestic violence was on the rise. So who is reporting that?
So those are probably family members, maybe neighbors, people that have more interactions with children. We did see more extreme cases in the abuse that was reported, but it's almost to be expected because we're removing children from one of their main sources of socialization and protection in schools. And we have a lot of children that were forced to shelter in place with their abusers. And so it was a really precarious situation because children didn't really have a lot of options in terms of identifying trusted adults or having access of people to disclose to.
You make a good point in the sense of, even though there were your normal reporters were not part of the picture, you did have other caring adults around, but the abuse that I'm hearing was tougher because maybe the frustrations were greater for having all the kids home at the same time, and maybe having to work from home and having to homework and all of that. Is that what you mean?
Definitely. So parents and children were just placed in a really new environment, as we all were, and trying to juggle the stresses of childcare with work is really difficult for a lot of parents. It will continue to be, I'm sure, for the rest of the school year. But in some cases, if the abuser was a parent or family member within the household, it really decreases the chance that that abuse would be reported, or that the child would feel like they had a way to get away from that situation.
So how long was it before you guys were getting signs from people that they had learned virtually, that they were picking up signs of distress from kids?
So many of the inquiries we received from the general public were oriented at how to keep children safe online. So a lot of the feedback from the general community was that they were concerned that the children were plugged into so many devices, they're learning online. The concern was that they would be exposed to inappropriate content. So a lot of the outreach that we've done is just to promote healthy relationships in developing online communities and helping our parents in particular develop some type of system for their household for setting expectations for behavior online, monitoring that device usage, and facilitating productive conversations with their children on what appropriate behavior looks like online and how they can stay safe.
And where can someone find that? Do you have a website where they can find those resources?
Yes, our website, caccollingcounty.org. You can find information on our educational programs, our recommended resources, and then I always refer people to Common Sense Media. They're a fantastic source of information for parents for really kind of filtering out what appropriate content is for their kids in terms of books, media, different gaming applications. They have a lot of different reviews from both parents and children, so you can kind of target what content your child takes in through their reviews.
So are there any advice that you can give to parents and older students who, are living virtually? They're seeing kids every day. And I say parents because I'm getting lots of reports that we have parents that are sitting right next to their kids during their lessons. Right. And oftentimes voicing their opinion as to the teacher's effectiveness, by the way, which probably not good to do. Teacher's nervous enough without needing that, right? But anyway, so is there anything they should be looking for that you all have learned that people have shared with you through this virtual world that could be a signal of distress that the kids themselves don't even know they're giving?
Yes, so in most cases, we tell people to look for those unexplained injuries. So those are going to be the most common signs. Children wearing clothing that's inappropriate for the weather or the season, sudden bruises that are coming up, or if the child is not present in those sessions. So if teachers are having difficulty setting up communication with the family, that can also be a warning sign. And then we also say changes in behavior. So if a child is more withdrawn during the sessions, if they seem upset, if they're not wanting to participate with their peers in that online discussion, those can definitely be some things to look out for, both on the parents' end and for the teachers.
And let's say that a teacher or maybe even a student comes to a teacher and says, "Hey, Miss Morgan, I've been noticing that Juanito is not talking as much. He seems down. There's maybe he has a black eye." What should the teacher do with that information?
The teacher should immediately report that information with the child's name, their address if they have it, to CPS or law enforcement. And we like to tell people there doesn't necessarily need to be concrete proof. We don't want our teachers or anyone, any of our citizens, to feel like they have to be investigators and to have all their facts lined up. If you see something that gives you cause to believe that that child is in danger or has been abused or neglected in some way, report it to CPS. If there's something that just has you deeply unsettled, even if it's not a bruise, if that child's behavior has changed drastically and you have reason to believe that they're unsafe, report it in every instance, because a report of abuse is made in the state of Texas every 2 months, or every 2 minutes, excuse me, and 92% of children that are abused are victimized by someone that they're familiar with. So children are not only being victimized by strangers, we have to really be mindful of who we allow around them, and also mindful of the fact that abuse does occur within the household. So we have to be on the lookout. And again, our teachers are so instrumental in those efforts.
Did I hear you say that 92% of the abuse cases are by somebody that they know?
Yes. So in speaking to the public, I really like to move people away from the misconception that stranger danger is the only thing we need to talk to our kiddos about. The idea that it's some creep that's hiding behind a computer that's going to target their children. That is common. We do have a lot of online solicitation and predators, but in most cases, 92% of the time, that person, that offender, is going to be someone that is familiar to that child. They will have tried to develop some type of bond or established a connection so that they have access to that child and are able to gain trust.
So let's say that I am a parent and either my child has come to me, or I've sort of seen this change in Juanito, and it triggers that mama thing in me. And so, what do I do? What do you how do you advise that parent to proceed?
As a parent, that's when we really have to focus on that communication piece. We don't want to wait until an incident has happened to do those regular check-ins throughout our daily activities. So even if you're picking up your children from a sporting event, maybe a sleepover, we want to consistently be asking those follow-up questions. So what all did you do at the event? Did you have a good time? How are you feeling? Is there anything that made you uncomfortable? Just those daily check-ins, so that when you do have those moments, you notice maybe there's a change in behavior or you feel unsettled. When you have that conversation with your child, they're more likely to open up to you and disclose if something has happened.
So if I'm a parent and I see something, I see a friend of my son, I'm seeing them pretty much every day. My son's friend is in my son's class, and I notice this change in behavior. Who do I report that to as a parent?
As a parent, I would report that behavior to the teacher to let them know what's going on. And if it's something where you feel that it needs to be acted upon immediately, if that child is in immediate danger or going back to an unsafe place, as a parent, even if that's not your child, you would be responsible to report any suspected instances of abuse or neglect to CPS or law enforcement. In the state of Texas, fun fact, everyone is a mandated reporter. It is not just our teachers and our counselors that are obliged to report abuse. It's every individual in the state.
I don't think that's well known.
It is not.
Wow. I think that's huge. How do we get that word out more?
Again, through community awareness activities, through our programs and our workshops, and honestly, our partnerships with different schools. We do a lot of trainings on recognizing and reporting abuse with our school staff. And in most cases, we'll have PTA participation and parents coming on board to join in those efforts so that they can share the information with their faith groups, different businesses, and other people in the community.
Wow. So see something, say something.
See something, say something.
That's tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, the 25th, is see something, say something day. And not that we're supposed to report something that's not there, but it's an awareness day. Gosh, that's huge. Thank you for making sure we knew that. I'm sure that most of the parents that are on listening to this today are going to sort of be taken aback by that.
Definitely. It can be an uncomfortable situation for parents to be in because no one wants to intrude on someone else's household or maybe speak on something that they don't feel they have all the information on. But what I try to convey to parents is that if that enables a life to be saved, if that removes a child from a situation that's not dangerous, then there is no real loss in that particular situation. If you see something, report it. If you feel unsettled, if like we tell children to report those red flag feelings when they feel uncomfortable, I like to tell our parents, if you see something and you genuinely feel that something is off, you can't lose by reporting it. You can never report too much in those situations.
So what happens if I report? Will the other person know that I reported it?
No. So your information is confidential. Whenever a person makes a report to CPS, they take the information from the child or the information of the child as far as their name and address, and they conduct their own investigation. You are then removed from that process. You are not required to participate after that. So there are some protections in place, and we like to remind people of that. And again, if CPS or law enforcement follows up and they find that there is no abuse or no neglect that's going on, perfect. Win-win for everyone involved. If they do find that maybe the family doesn't have the proper resources, that's when they're able to refer them to our center. At the Advocacy Center, that's one of the primary responsibilities of our Family Advocacy Department. They're able to refer families to different resources for food, housing, and clothing. So even though there might not have been abuse going on in that situation, because a report was made, that family will still be able to receive assistance because of that initial report.
Well, that's good to know. I know I've learned something just from talking to you, and Ms. Morgan has too. She's, I'm sure she's going to take some of this back as well. So, what do you want us to ultimately leave parents with the understanding as far as this new environment and their part in helping protect kids in this new environment?
That is extremely important, not only to be vigilant, but just to continue to foster positive conversations with children. We know that it can be difficult trying to navigate the virtual and in-person interactions, but all of that is mitigated when you have parents that are connected with their children, that are able to have open, positive communication so that when anything does occur, those children are more likely to disclose that information to their parents or to a trusted adult. And that's just a reminder, again, for parents to sit down and have those discussions. During the daily activities, just checking in with your kids and really seeing how they're feeling, what's going on in their day-to-day lives is really impactful in the long term.
Well, thank you very much. I know that that this has been very valuable to our listeners today. Both of you have brought in insight from your worlds that that will broaden our parents and our educators that are listening to understand it may be a new world, but there's some old things going on in it. And so they've still got their part to play in keeping kids safe. So thank you, both of you, for that. And I appreciate you taking the time to be on today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, so let's go on and segue. We have, and you guys can just sort of pop off. There should be there you go. We have Ms. Thomas-Mosby said something that reminded me of something I recently read, and that was an article that was about grandparents who are now having to take the part of the parent during the school day because the parents are working, right? And so much of what she said is also in that article. But the numbers is what really helped me understand the magnitude of this. 2.7 million kids need to have their grandparents sit with them during the day. And so think about that as a challenge. Some of you are grandparents. Some of you are longtime grandparents. Imagine yourself in a situation where you've been thrust into taking your elementary school grandkids, or maybe even your middle school grandkids, and you're having to now either you go to their house or they come to your house every day, and making sure that they are getting online and that they are doing their work and understanding their work and paying attention to their work. And so there are resources and opportunities to do better as grandparents, to be able to make sure that the environment is an instructional one, even though it's in your home, or that you've gone to your kids' home to help manage the grandkids' instructional day. And then that is establish a routine. You've heard me say this many times since we've been doing this with COVID. You've heard me say establish a routine, stick to the routine, and you will find that really will work itself out as far as the kids wanting that in the long run and functioning better within it. So establishing a routine, making sure that there are brain breaks, making sure that there's exercise, that there is a time to stop and eat lunch, where we shut down, we walk away from the device, and we talk about something else, or even reflect over the learning from the morning together as we eat lunch, and then go back to it at a certain time, and know that as grandparents, you also have the opportunity to talk to teachers. It is very easy for parents to give that permission to grandparents through the teacher, right? Contact the teacher, parents, say, hey, my parents, the grandparents are taking care of the kids, and make sure that the grandparents can have the opportunity to ask questions of the teacher during the school day. Many times teachers, as part of their schedule, have office hours, as we call them. We've sort of made our teachers like college professors, right? And so they have the opportunity to be able to talk to parents and to maybe talk over issues and so forth. Well, if you're a grandparent and you are helping with the instructional day of your grandkids, you get to take advantage of the teacher as a resource as well. And so if you haven't felt empowered that way, please do feel empowered that way. It's not fair for you to think that just because you're a grandparent doesn't mean that you don't get to take advantage of that as well. So let me see the resources that you have available to you. And if, by the way, if you as a grandparent are needing more technology instruction, and for whatever reason your grandkids may be too young to help you with that, there are many ways that you can get help with the different learning platforms, whether your child is Zooming or using Google Meets, Google Classrooms. There are lots of videos out there to help you get more comfortable with helping your grandkids in those learning platforms. So let me see. Let's see. So there are some learning resources which we will put in the chat to help you as a grandparent feel more comfortable in getting resources to your child, your grandchild, as they sometimes struggle with the work. And they're supposed to, by the way, they're supposed to struggle with the work. Okay. Please know that kids, if they're not struggling with the work, then they are maybe not learning. Maybe that's not enough. It's not hard enough for them. And that's something for you as a grandparent to be on the lookout for. If your grandchild seems to be breezing through the work, and frankly, this is advice for parents too. If your grandchild is breezing through the work, seems to get done in no time, and is maybe needs to be either given more additional work after a chat with the teacher. Maybe that child is young and hasn't been tested for gifted and talented. Maybe he or she is gifted and talented and hasn't been identified yet, and so they haven't had access to the strategies and resources that the gifted program often gives to kids who have been identified as gifted and talented. All of that is part of what you all, whether grandparents or parents, need to be on the lookout for and become an advocate for your child in that way. And frankly, if you're home with your child and you are sitting with them, you are taking part in their instructional day because you happen to be able to be home with them, you're able to more quickly see things that might take you weeks or never if they're in a face-to-face environment at school. You might not have noticed if they were in a face-to-face and not in your face at home that your child is struggling with certain type of math or with reading levels or with writing. Writing is a huge one. If you're seeing that your child's not getting enough writing practice from the curriculum that is given for your child's grade level, see something, say something. And in this case, this is advocating for your child. It's okay, and we want to empower parents to feel comfortable being able to talk to the teacher and say, this is what I'm seeing. Am I reading it correctly? And having that professional dialogue with the teacher. And if you feel like, sometimes it happens, not very often, but it will happen, where you will get a teacher who maybe is a bit defensive, maybe he or she feels like you are maybe questioning their instructional technique or their instructional content or depth of content. Again, remaining professional, but maybe having to bring in the school leadership, the assistant principal, the principal to maybe take part in the conversation. Again, always staying professional and professional dialogue around this, because it is sometimes the parent who catches things that need to be better with their child rather than the teacher catching it. It happens. And so making sure that parents feel empowered to do that, or grandparents too, please, then please know that it's okay. We don't have perfect teachers in every classroom. I wish we did. Matter of fact, unfortunately, we are struggling to get more teachers into the classroom now. This type of environment has been challenging. And here's what I'm going to say. We've had teachers quit right before school starts because the mere thought of doing what Miss Morgan shared with us scared them. But guess what? As you saw Miss Morgan, she very quickly figured it out that she just needed a change in mindset, right? Well, I wish some of these teachers had done that, but I bet some of those teachers who retired because of the unknown would have actually ended up doing a pretty good job of it if they had just given themselves that pep talk that they needed to be there for kids. But it's been a rough period, and not everybody has been able to see the positive stuff that has come from being in a COVID environment. And so we are struggling to get enough teachers to fill our classrooms, especially with social distancing, but that's a whole nother subject. But okay, so we have some resources like Grammarly, Grammarly.com, which is a spell check and proofreads for grammatical errors. Khan Academy, which is fantastic. It's a free tutorial platform known for its short math videos that explains concepts in various subjects. Khan Academy now also features tutorials and courses on subjects including science, reading, vocabulary, history, and social studies. They've really expanded. It used to be one guy videotaping, and now it's huge. Online resources like Photomath and Symbolab, which is symbolab.com, photomath.app, allows you to submit a math problem and get the solution or explanations on how to solve the problem. That's huge, folks, especially for some of our parents and grandparents who have been away from math for a few years, right? My Math Flashcards is an app that helps with math facts. And that, I tell you, second, third, fourth, fifth, if you, grandparents, parents, can help those grade levels with their numeracy, with adding, subtraction, multiplication, and division, oh my goodness, if you could help with that, you will help your child in a way that is unbelievable. And so now you have my Math Flashcards app. You guys can do that in the car. You can do it waiting in line at the grocery store. I mean, there's just so many opportunities to help with your child's numeracy. How about tutoring websites that can help with, let's see, for younger grades, Wide Open School. Local library offers free access to books, magazines, and newspaper subscriptions. Many libraries provide members with robust online options, including digital books and magazines. Explore resources offered by your schools, your students' school and district. Many have a homework helpline and offer free peer tutoring or access to digital tools and platforms. And I just saw something from College Station. They are having a free digital K-12 homework help, and we'll put that in the comments so that you have that. Ask for a teacher manual. So if you, and not all schools are using textbooks still, but some do, and sometimes you can ask for a digital teacher copy so that you can have access to the teacher notes and so forth. Now, just know that some teachers may decline this request because they think it will prevent cheating. So, these are just areas to explore. Some other resources for grandparents. Here's some good articles. Grandparents face separation anxiety amid the pandemic. So you Google that and that article come up. Reports of grandparent scams surged during the pandemic. Well, of course, you already know that. Speaking with adult grandchildren about social distancing during COVID-19, because some of our older grandkids think they're immortal, right? And so they go off to college and they don't socially distance. But anyway, that's maybe old news by now. We have a last thing to talk about when it comes to making sure that needs are met for our kids is sort of backtracking a little bit and talking about how we can help our parents and our teachers with social emotional help, resources, therapy that's free, so that as we get stronger as parents mentally, as we get stronger as teachers mentally, we can just then turn that around and help our own children or our students. And so the Texas Education Agency has something called Project Restore, which I've talked about. I haven't spent a whole lot of time on there. And of course, time is not my friend today either, but I'm going to keep bringing this up so that those that are new to us and haven't heard this news understand that you have a resource at your disposal, which is very professionally done. It's the Texas Restore Project. You can go to the Texas Education Agency website. It doesn't matter what state you're in. You can find it, look at the welcome video, which sort of tells you about it. And what it does is it trains the adults to understand and to walk through and reflect through their own experience through this COVID time. And then as the adults understand themselves better and come to terms with all that has changed, all that has to be different now, and as the adults get to be more comfortable with the changes and so forth, get mentally stronger themselves, they're able then to help their student or their children do the same. And there's a series of 6 videos. They're about 30 minutes. They have self-paced guides in there. You can stop the video and answer the reflection questions. And so I hope that you will take advantage of these resources and make sure that self-care happens, because if you self-care yourself, then your children, your students benefit from that. It makes sense, doesn't it? If you're an emotional mess, how are you going to help your kids, right? And so there are so many free resources out there. And if that's not enough for you, if you need even more, go to the Region 10 Service Center website. They have right on the front page, you'll easily be able to find their social emotional resources. Again, free to whomever needs it across the world. I mean, all this digital access can be accessed anytime from anywhere, right? And so if you happen to be sitting in Timbuktu and you are watching us and you need some mental health just help, you have it, and it's free, even to the point of being able to take part in forums together with other people live during set times. I mean, there are just so many ways that you can touch base with others and get comfortable around what's happened and come to terms with it to the point where you are able to become mentally stronger and then be a better spouse, a better grandparent, a better parent, a better educator. It all works that way. So we don't have a lot of time left. It seems like we always come down to the wire, but I do want to remind many of you that don't know this, that this is the Ask Dr. Be Good show. I'm here to answer questions about what's going on in public education today. If you're having a situation that's uncomfortable and you don't know how to handle it, whether you're a parent with an uncomfortable school situation, maybe for whatever reason, your child's teacher just doesn't seem to be open to what you seem to be saying, what you seem to have learned about your child, what to do. If you seem to think that your school is stalling and not being very helpful and not hearing you, there are ways of reaching me. You can go to the Ask Dr. Be Good Facebook page and click on the email there and send me an email. And I'm happy to give you some advice. I've very often been an advocate for parents. I've been an advocate for educators, and I rarely am, how can I say this? I'm rarely wrong in my advice. And that's because not only have I been doing this a long time, I've been a supervisor in schools for many years. I've been a superintendent now. Next month will be 9 years that I've been a superintendent. And so there are not many situations that I haven't run up against and been able to help resolve. I don't have the answers to everything. What I have is sometimes the law, the Texas Education Code in Texas. Every state has education codes that their public schools must follow. And so I can help you guide you to those resources, or just give you some advice that you might find is helpful to empower you a little bit to solve that problem. I also have the Ask Dr. Be Good app. And again, we're at the end of our time. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We are part of the JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network. If you have a podcast idea and you think you can fill a weekly time slot, they would love to have you as part of their network. They still have a few slots left. That would be the JP, Kathy, and the Crew 3 at gmail.com. Or you can go to JP, Kathy, and the Crew Facebook page and contact them that way. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again next week at 8 o'clock a.m.